The Vanguard Puzzle, a lesson in analytical precision. Sarah looked at the case file sitting on her screen. The title read, The Vanguard File. This was not an ordinary investigation. The case had landed on her desk after an anonymous whistleblower email made some serious allegations. The message claimed that the chief financial officer of Vanguard Solutions was involved in financial misconduct through a possible lapping scheme. It also alleged that the CFO had created a toxic work environment and intimidated employees who questioned financial irregularities. For an inexperienced investigator, the amount of information could have been overwhelming. There were 7 digital evidence collections containing encrypted emails, access records, spreadsheets, and other documents scattered across different systems. But Sarah knew something important. A good investigation is not about moving quickly. It is about moving carefully and logically. The goal is not to collect the most information. The goal is to understand which information matters, how the evidence connects, and whether the final conclusion can be defended. So Sarah began with the first step of her comprehensive case analysis. She started by reviewing all available evidence. Her first rule was simple: start from zero. She did not assume the CFO was guilty. She also did not assume the whistleblower was completely accurate. Her job was not to prove the allegation. Her job was to find out what actually happened. Sarah began by separating information into 2 categories. First, she identified the facts that were not disputed. For example, records confirmed that the CFO was physically present in the building on the dates mentioned in the complaint. Then she identified the facts that were disputed. One example was a disagreement about what happened during a late-night meeting in Freezer 2. Different people provided different versions of events. To understand the sequence of events, Sarah created a timeline. She mapped out who did what, when it happened, and what evidence supported each event. But she did not only look at what was present. She also looked for what was missing. Sometimes the missing information tells an investigator just as much as the information that exists. In this case, Sarah noticed unusual gaps in the metadata of several expense reports. The records appeared to have been modified, but the normal tracking information was missing. That became an important investigative question. Next, Sarah moved to identifying the key investigative issues. She asked herself, what is this case really about? Was this simply a case of financial misconduct by one individual? Or was there a deeper organizational problem involving weak controls, poor oversight, or a culture that allowed the behavior to continue? Sarah reviewed the investigation mandate and refined the issues. Instead of using broad legal terms such as hostile work environment, she focused on specific behaviors. What exactly was said? What actions were taken? Who approved the vendor invoices? Were financial controls bypassed? She realized the issue was bigger than just missing money. The deeper issue was the environment that allowed the behavior to continue. Employees felt unable to challenge decisions. The CFO had created a culture where questioning financial information was discouraged. That culture of silence became a critical part of the investigation. After identifying the key issues, Sarah needed to establish her investigative priorities. She understood that she could not investigate everything at once. For example, interviewing all 50 employees in the finance department would consume significant time but might not provide meaningful additional information. Instead, she focused on the evidence and witnesses that could provide the greatest value. Her first priority was evidence preservation. She worked with the IT team to secure digital evidence before it disappeared, including chat records, emails, and other electronic information. Digital evidence can be fragile. Once deleted or overwritten, it may become difficult or impossible to recover. Her second priority was interview sequencing. Sarah decided to begin with neutral third-party witnesses who had direct knowledge of the events. These interviews would help establish the facts before speaking with the CFO. She planned to interview the subject later, after she had developed a stronger understanding of the evidence and could ask more focused questions. Her third priority was verification. She compared the CFO's statements with objective records, such as badge access data. The question was simple: did the available evidence support the explanation? If the records contradicted the statement, that information would become an important part of the analysis. By the time Sarah completed her comprehensive case analysis, the investigation no longer looked like a confusing collection of documents and allegations. The pieces had started to connect. The mystery had become a logical chain of evidence. For investigators, this is the purpose of comprehensive case analysis. It transforms scattered information into a structured understanding of what happened. When conducting your own case analysis, remember 3 important principles. First, think symmetrically. Review all evidence fairly. Consider both evidence that supports the allegation and evidence that challenges it. Do not fall into confirmation bias by only searching for information that supports your first impression. Second, peel the onion. Do not stop at the obvious issue. If the allegation is true, ask, what else must have failed for this to happen? Look for weaknesses in systems, processes, controls, and culture. Finally, master the roadmap. Good investigations depend on good planning. Identify your most fragile evidence first. Protect digital records before they disappear. Interview witnesses strategically. Build your understanding step by step before reaching conclusions. Remember the investigative standard. You are not trying to achieve absolute certainty. You are trying to determine what is more likely than not based on the available evidence. That is the balance of probabilities standard. A professional investigator does not solve cases through assumptions. They solve cases through disciplined analysis, logical reasoning, and evidence-based conclusions. Let's review again the key investigator competencies when conducting a comprehensive case analysis. You must adopt the proper mindset of appropriate skepticism. You should think symmetrically. Review all available evidence, ensuring you give equal weight to exculpatory evidence as you do to inculpatory evidence. Do not fall victim to confirmation bias by only looking for what supports your initial hunch. You should know how to peel the onion. When identifying key investigative issues, look for the tip of the iceberg. Ask yourself, if this allegation is true, what other business processes or internal controls must have failed? Master the roadmap is another key competence of an investigator. When establishing priorities, remember that proper planning prevents poor performance. Identify your most fragile evidence first, such as digital files or fading memories, and sequence your interviews to build a foundation of facts before confronting the subject. You also apply the 50% plus a feather standard. Always evaluate your analysis against the balance of probabilities. Your goal is to determine what is more likely than not based on the evidence, not to achieve metaphysical certainty. In conclusion, when an investigator performs a comprehensive case analysis, he should review all available evidence, be able to identify key investigative issues, and establish investigative priorities.